of today. Holding the portion of Akev. We are in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse number 11. Hishamalacha, be very careful. Pen tishkach Hashem lakecha, may you forget God. Levil tishmer, as a mitzvah is to be not by keeping His commandments, mishpatav, chukaisav, and His ordinances, and His rules, ashanech mitzav chayim, which I command you today. Pentechal vasavachalto bottom tivna. You might eat, at least you eat. You're gonna Baruch Hashem have good food, and you are going to be satiated. Bottom and you're gonna build beautiful houses. Utivna v'yashafti, you'll dwell in them. And your herds and your flock will multiply. The kasav is of yirbalacha, and you'll have a lot of Baruch Hashem, a lot of money. And everything you'll have will only multiply. You will, your heart will grow. You'll forget the Eibush who took you out of Mitzrayim, from the house of slavery, which has led you through this great and awesome desert. Nachash Sara v'Yakov, a desert that has snakes and vipers and scorpions, and a thirst that has no water. Which has taken forth water from a flint stone. Man, which gave you man bamidbar in the desert, which your fathers didn't know. To test you. In order to afflict you, to test you. Which will only ultimate for your benefit. And you'll say in your hearts, that it was the might and the strength of my hand that accumulated this wealth. You should remember God. He's the one who's giving you strength. Last is to be strong. Laman Hakim is brisay, so you should establish His covenant. Which He promised your fathers. As today. If you forget, will you forget your God? You'll go after other gods. You'll serve them. You'll bow down to them. You should know today, you're going to disappear. Just like the nations that have disappeared, destroyed. Cain Tavid Eke, and so you'll also disappear. Eke, because you didn't hear in the voice of your God, the voice of God our God. Chapter 9, verse number 1. Shema Yisrael, here is you're going across the Jordan today, love Goyim, to come and to dispose nations. Gedolim, which are great, Vatsumim, stronger than you. Arim Gedolis, big fortified cities of Betzudah Shamayim, fortified up to the heaven. Now she said, you are mighty, but they are mightier than you. Verse number 2, I'm God over Ram, as well as great tall people, descendants of giants. Ashate Adaita, which you knew, Vatashamaita, which you heard. Who can stand against the descendants of giants? Verse number 3. You should know today. Your God, He is the one who goes before you. He's a burning fire. He's going to destroy them. And He's going to subdue them. You'll inherit them, you'll drive them out. Meher, quickly, like God has promised you. And that completes the Chumash for today. We are in the 5th letter of the Alter Rebbe. It's a Kabbalistic letter, deep letter. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining the letters of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you all know that the Eibishter created the world. Asara Mamar is Nivra Olam. The world was created through the words of God. And that the Torah itself says it that way. That God created the world through words. And the Zohar explains that it's through the concept of letters and the holy letters, Lashon HaKodesh, that these 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet have within them godly concepts, spiritual concepts. Hey la, hey tata, the higher letter, the higher hey, the lower hey. These are extremely spiritual concepts. And the Alter Rebbe explains that we can understand it for the human being ultimately. So we learned above that the Zohar teaches who makes the holy name every day, he who gives charity to the poor. Relevance in this answer, however, remains obscure, because what does it mean? What does it giving charity have to do with God's name? Now, therefore, equipped with the foresight, insight, we revert to the question which is the letter opened up. How does giving tzedakah to poor make the name of God? And the Alter Rebbe explains, because again, it's all about creating the building of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Shem Yichud Kuchabrichu Shchinte. It's all about the unification of God's name. Now, in the terrestrial man, in this human being, Lamashals, for example, the human being here in this world, Mishu Chacham Gadol, man who's a great genius. Maskil Haskin, the flow is Chachma. He has the capability of comprehending great wisdom. Great wisdom. And he contracts his seichel, his intellect, and his thought, in a single letter of a speech. The man has the capability, a genius, to be able to bring down the greatness of his wisdom into a letter, into a word. Can you say it? That's the chokhmah of advertising. How do you bring down everything into a logo? Branding. It's all about branding. It's all about how do you create a letter, a word. One word can change the whole marketing of your business. One word. The greatest marketing word in America in business was the word repeat. That was the $1 billion word. Repeat. That you need to repeat things. You need to do things again. You need to use the shower. You need to use the shampoo twice. Repeat. Favas veisich nicht. One time it's not enough. You need to repeat. That word created a $1 billion industry. So everything ultimately has the capability to come down into one word. This contraction is a great descent to the wisdom that's really behind it. So this is that. If you understand this concept into the aspect of establishing a word and bringing down a concept in a word, I want to bring it to God. And when you want to bring it to God, and you say the Eibishter's word, God's word, then it was immensely great and mighty that the contraction to God is infinite. Is his contraction is above and beyond our concept of what it means a contraction. As it says that during the 6 days of creation, it says in the heavens were made with the word of God. In the host and all the host of the breath of his mouth. The Ois Hey Shel Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, which Kabbalah says is the letter Hey. You should know the letter Hey is the most letter that's connected to the Ruach. Asa Kalila, it's a lighter letter because it comes to the breath. Hey, it comes to the basically. It's like the breath. It's like the Hevel, and that's why it says I call Hevel. Everything comes from the breath. Everything comes. The world was created from the breath of God. The breath. So this is not only a single letter, but also a substantial one. So bihi bottom, as the verse says, bihi bottom, which is an interesting word in Hebrew. In the pasuk, it says bihi bottom. Why did it say be bottom? Bihi bottom. So the Zohar writes bihi bottom, behei bottom. It's the hay. These are the chronicles of the heavens, the bihi bottom, when they were created by vocalizing the Hebrew letter of this word, bihi bottom. You could say behei bottom. By vocalizing the letter, this word, the sages read it as if it was simultaneously pronounced behei bottom. The verse would now mean that these are the chronicles of the heavens and the earth. With the letter hey, he created them. He makarates my mother is in the letter hey is the source of the 9 creative utterance, which issue from the third utterance, Bereshis. The word of Bereshis all comes from the letter hey. All comes behei bottom. Because the hey is actually the most, it's the easiest letter, because it just comes from your breath. But everything comes from your breath. All the other letters come from the breath. So therefore, it's really the essence of everything. It's the hey, which is self-created utterance, Bereshis. Bechinas Chachma Nikazeshis, which is identical to the Sifir of Chachma, Bereshis. Bereshis, which is called Reshis. What Rashi says. What is Bereshis? In the beginning. Rashi says no Bereshis with Reshis. Rashi says the Bereshis doesn't mean the beginning. Bereshis means, Rashi translates the first pasuk of Chumash, he translates Bereshis b'Chachma. Rashi was you see the Rashi had within it the concept, he had also the concept of Chassidus. So the simple translation is the beginning, but the real translation is that Rashi says b'Chachma, with wisdom. God created the world with wisdom, Sfiras HaChachma. The phrase Reish is Chachma, the beginning of wisdom. So the descent of Chachma, the source of other 9 creative utterances, into Malchus, the lowest of the Sfiras, involves the intense degree of contraction. And that's already. That Bereshis, it comes out through Behei Bottom, comes out through Hey, which is all a contraction of a contraction of a contraction. Because even wisdom is a contraction of the essence of God. But however, what's the difference? God created the world. God did it totally through chesed. Olam chesed yibonim. However, the time of beginning of creation, this downward flow from Chachma to Malchus occurred without an arousal from below whatsoever. Why? Ki Adam Ayin La'avid. Because at that time, the first day of creation, there was no man to work the land and bring about this arousal. So now, before the creation of man, was done totally chesed chinam. It was done totally through God's kindness. Because there was no man, there was no human to be able to create within God the desire for this. The Eibishter had a desire to act of kindness. You can't ask a question. That's why chafetz is a desire. Chesed is kindness. Alter Rebbe puts both words there. Chafetz, it's a pasuk. Chafetz chesed. The Eibishter is chafetz chesed. Desire. You might argue with God. Why did God have kindness? But you cannot argue with a desire of kindness. As the Rebbe would always say, I would say, teva tev later. The nature of kindness is kindness. To do kindness. Why? Because that's its desire. That's the way the Eibishter created the concept of chesed. As the world, as it's put down, says the pasuk, the world was created, stands, is built upon kindness. And also it says bihi bottom, which also is another meaning. Be'avram. You can take bihi bottom, the same word, and you can take the hey and put it in the middle, and now it says the word, and take the aleph and put it in the beginning, and now it says Be'avram, Abraham. Another interpretation of it. This is Chronicles of the Heavens, their bihi bottom, when they were created by the transposing the Hebrew letters of this word. That's one of the beauties of the Hebrew language, is a living language, because you can change the letters, especially an aleph and a hey, it's silent in a letter. By transposing the letter of this word, the sages read the word, it's simultaneous Be'avram. through the attribute of characterized by Avram Avinu, which is chesed. By Avram, what Abraham is ultimately going to do, Abraham is going to be the attribute of chesed. Chesed la'Avram. Kindness is to Avram. Since Avram embodies the attribute of chesed, the verse does that the heavens and the earth created through the attribute of chesed. But after the creation of man, which ultimately makes more sense because ultimately Avram Avinu brought about the descent of God into the world. God, Avram Avinu was the one who brought about the ches of the Eibishter in the world, started off the whole process of elevating the world. But really, it was Adam Arishan. The Eibishter created Adam Arishan la'avda l'shamra. As the verse says, he put him in the Garden of Eden, la'avda, to work it. His lifelong task being drawn down into this world, a flow of divine energy by means of arousal from above, from below. That the Abish said, no, now that I created man, I put him in the world, he's going to awaken up this desire, this chesed. And that's why the Torah says, I put Adam into Adam and Eve into the Garden of Eden, la'avda u'l'shamra, to work the world. And to make this avodah, the service of man, to awaken up the juices of this world, to awaken up God's desire for the world. But we all know that he ultimately blew it the first day of his creation. He did a chet. It was chased out of things. We had to wait to Avram Avinu. Ba'Avram. We had to wait to Avram. We had to wait until 1948 of creation for Avram Avinu to come and to restart the whole concept. But it really was the purpose of Adam and Eve. The first in the day of his creation, the Eibishter says, I put you in this garden la'avda l'shamra. Because I want avodah sa'adam. I want the service of man. And we know the Gemara says that it didn't rain until Avram Avinu, until Adam Arishan prayed for rain. Adam Arishan gave the names of all the animals. He did a lot, Adam Arishan, Adam and Chava, by the means of his own spiritual labors. And every arousal from above, to arouse the attribute of the supreme kindness, from then and on, from the creation of man, the sixth day of creation, until today, is all about the avodah of a human being to arouse within God the concept of to be asarusa de latata and arousal from above, below. So that's why you have in Kabbalah asarusa de latata, asarusa de leila. An awakening from below is an awakening from above. It's daka v'chesed, the acts of charity, and that's the power of tzedakah, because tzedakah is the mitzvah that is mamish in the concept of what God did in creation. God did a tzedakah to the world, no asarusa de latata. No awakening from below. He did a chesed chinam. He did an act of kindness without any strings attached until the sixth day of creation. So do a Jew does now a chesed chinam. And that's the chesed we want to waken up from God. A chesed chinam, a chesed that's above the world, not connected to a specific thing. And therefore the greatest way to do that is through giving tzedakah. Thus, these good deeds draw down divine influence from the yud of the God's name. That's a chachma. From the level of chachma to the final hey of God's name, which is malchus. In this way, then good deeds bring together to make the name of God, and is drawn in a downward into its end. That's how the Kabbalah says. It says that through my giving of tzedakah today in the morning, I pasha created God's name. I created the Eibishter because I brought about an arousal from below. My kindness brought about a kindness, awakened up the true concept of kindness above, came out from the letter Yud, which is Chachma, came down to the letter Hey, which is Bina, came down to the letter Vav, which is the Midas, and ultimately came down in Malchus, which is going to affect this world. So I've created through my act of kindness. I didn't say anything. I just did an act of kindness. And that act of kindness created the Eibish's name. So I created the world. And therefore, the rabbis of blessed memory said, whoever says that he has nothing but Torah, he doesn't need to have acts of kindness. I have Torah. I have the learning. I'm a learner. I'm not a giver. I'm a learner. I am not a giver. I feel a Torah. He doesn't even have Torah. Every one of us has to learn Torah and has to do acts of kindness. One doesn't take away from the other. It's the opposite. They help one another. Even though the Torah, person might say, what do you mean the Torah is the wisdom of God? What could be greater than creating God's name through his Torah? But and through the Torah, by the virtue of a Torah, you give existence to the world. So, be'inah the lanba, and those who discourse they give. So why do you give milas chasadim? If I learn Torah, if my Torah gives existence to the world, why do you need milas chasadim? The answer is kibidiburam, because your Torah is speech. Mamshich maras ashpars, chachmei. Then through Torah, they elicit illumination and a fusion of godliness from the supreme Chachma, the source of Torah, into the planes of the letters of speech. Through speech. We say the same every day in our daven. That in the Kaveh, our sages of blessed memory said, regard to the Torah scholars, do not read Boinoich, your children, Ela Boinoich, your builders. That in essence, it's not your children who are the builders of the world. It's your students who are the builders of the world. For they build the world through the study of Torah. So nobody's arguing with that. It's an important lesson for us what's happening in the world today, especially in Israel. I'll think of limit Torah. That through the learning, the students sitting and learning Torah, they are the ones who establish the world. They are the ones who protect the world. Nevertheless, this flow of chachma to the letters of speech is a great descent. And therefore, it's not alone through the Torah. Because since if I want the Torah to ultimately affect the world in a positive way, I need to awaken up within this flow that it comes through Chesed Elyon. Hanimshach kamayim makom gavoya lemakom noch, that flows down, is drawn down from the high place to a low place. Basarusa latata bitzdaka v'chesed, by the means of an arousal from below, the acts of charity and kindness from above. Mamshichim chayim v'chesed lahachish ruach shefelim in the whereby one diffuses life and kindness to revive the spirit of the humble and the downcast, physical, humble and downcast. By doing so, he draws down a supernal kindness to the vitality of Chachma, descends to the letters of speech, the source of creation. So even though, again, the problem is that through Chachma alone, through Torah alone, it might not come down in the right way. It might not come down. The Torah might not come down in the right way, that a person that is that is contrite, a person that is low, will be able to be affected by it. The way a Talmid Chacham should do it is first he should give tzedakah. Before he learns, he should give tzedakah. He should do an act of kindness to help a person, somebody that need, somebody that's maybe not a knowledgeable person, somebody that's in desperate need of money. And then he can bring now through his Torah, he can bring about a fusion, not a concept of revelation of godness, not only to his Chachma, but also to the world. And the Torah will be able to influence the world. And now we understand the verse which says, Al Yisala Chachma Chacham b'Chachmasei. Let not the wise man glory in his wisdom. even though it's an unbelievable thing. The world stands on your wisdom. The world stands on the Torah you're learning, the Torah you're teaching, the Torah that you are aspiring to. The world stands on it. But don't praise yourself on that. What but this let his glory, understanding and knowing me. But in such a manner that brings about the fulfillment of the phrase that follows, for I am God who acts kindness. That's what a person should be misal, the chesed. Not in his wisdom, not how smart he is, not how even smart he is in the Torah, how brilliant he is in the Torah, how important the learning of Torah is. Nobody's arguing with that. The learning of Torah, Talmud Torah, keneged kulam. The learning of Torah is above and beyond everything. But the Torah needs to be brought down to the physical world. The Torah needs to be infused in the physical world. The Torah needs to transform the physical world. And that's through an act of kindness. And that's through an act of kindness. And that's when it's connected with chesed. We thus see that wisdom is justifiable, glorified when it leads to acts of kindness, which in turn evokes the reciprocal act of kindness from above. For it's chesed. So we're making a big mistake, and a lot of people make this mistake. And we think Talmud Torah keneged kulam is the chachma. But it's really, that's not true. The chachma teaches us the importance of chesed. The wisdom and teaches us the importance of chesed, the importance of kindness. That's what your chachma should bring to you. Chachma should bring to you the concept of how important the act of kindness is. Even though you might think, well, the act of kindness was wasting my time. Let somebody else do kindness. No, everybody needs to do kindness. Because the chesed, the kindly conduct of man here below, that results from fulfillment of the words, I am God who acts of kindness. Meaning, with the chesed of asiyah, my act of kindness. And that causes the vitality of chachma to be issued downwards into letters of speech, the source of all created beings. So therefore, I want my wisdom not to only create, I want my Torah, my wisdom of Torah, not to only affect the spiritual world of speech. I want my wisdom of Torah to affect the physical world of speech. And that needs to be done through chesed, through a physical act of kindness. And then I have elevated my physical act of kindness. Now the Torah can come into my physical world. The Torah can affect my physical world. Vimlav, and if you're not going to do that, it's stay in wisdom. Stay in wisdom. It's great. Wisdom is phenomenal. It's unbelievable. But that's where it's going to stay. It's going to stay in the world of wisdom. It will not affect the world. Actually, it might be abrasive to the world. It might be dysfunctional. It might be unattainable. People might look at it as a negative thing. Chas v'shalom. Because the chacham, the one who is wise, didn't do an act of kindness. Doesn't maybe comprehend what the importance of the act of kindness is. So the answer to kindly conduct, the Torah study as such a person, a lot of people need to learn this. Such a person that is called his wisdom alone. It remains in heaven as an untapped resource in which the wise man cannot glory. So don't glorify yourself, because the Torah is the Torah of God. It's not your Torah. It's not your chachma. All your chachma doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. So what are you praising yourself in? If there's no downward flow, if there's no downward flow, that's where Adam Arishan mistaken. That's why when we talk about Avram Avinu, what do we talk about his greatness? That he taught his children chesed, kindness. He taught his children to walk in the way of God and and through the acts of kindness. Both concepts go together: to walk in the way of the Eibishter, to walk in the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to learn Torah, to do mitzvahs, to live a life of godliness, but through the acts of kindness. Because without that, then it doesn't come into this world. Then it's not la'avda or l'shamra. And you're Adam edition. Adam was a great genius, and nobody says he wasn't a genius. He was the genius of all geniuses. It's brought down. Yitzir kappa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was the essence of everything. Knew the language of everything. Created, gave the name of everything. Whatever Adam Rishon did in the world, he accomplished spiritually, but ultimately he was chased away, banished, because he forgot at this point. Maybe he didn't have somebody to teach him. He didn't comprehend this point. We had to wait. We had to wait to Avram Avinu. Hey, bottom, Avram, bottom. We had to wait to Avram Avinu with the concept of Chesed, the concept of kindness, to break through this concept and bring it back to the world again. Bring back godliness to the world through Midas HaChesed. Bring back the wisdom of God to the world through Midas HaChesed. Because without that, there's no downward flow of life from it. God forbid. Chas v'shalom. God forbid. You should know in this statement of the Alter Rebbe, he transformed the world. He transformed the world, the learned world, the world of knowledge, of Torah, the way it existed in his times. And it's still in a work in progress, this concept, to transform the world, to realize that Torah is important. There's no question about it. Nobody's going to argue that the Torah is the most important thing that any Jew can connect to. But it has to come through Midas HaChesed. It has to come through the concept of Chesed. And if not, it's not going to affect this world. It's not going to transform the world that we know. Oops. Today, my friends, is the seventh day of the month, which is chapter 43 to chapter 83 to chapter 87. Chapter 83 to chapter 87, you do the chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes today that the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, explained the relationship of fire and the inner Torah. We just learned today, Chassidus. Torah, Alter Rebbe said that the Torah, Chassidus, is the fire. Torah is called Mayim. A Mayim ela Torah, water. Chassidus is compared to fire. Eish, the fire. Why? Because the inner Torah gives vitality to the revealed Torah. When one learns in halacha, and he knows that after 120 years on this earth, he'll learn the same halacha in Gan Eden, that puts a little fire into him. So realize that everything that you learn in this world has within it a spiritual dimension to it. It's not just the law. This is the law. This is what I got to do. This is what I don't got to do. There's a whole spirituality behind this, as we just learned in Tanya. There's a whole creator of God. Mamash, by me giving a penny tzedakah, I'm creating the Abish's name, and I'm giving vitality to the whole world. And I'm not only giving vitality to the world, I'm giving vitality to whatever I learned. This penny that I gave to tzedakah today is giving vitality to what I've learned. It gives a fire behind the learning, hopefully. It creates a fire in your learning. It creates a fire in everything that you do. Okay, God bless you all. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. And I will see you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We'll continue.